The most educated, most emotionally aware, most intentional parents in human history are raising the most anxious generation of children ever recorded. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. And the more degrees on the wall, the more parenting books on the shelf, the more likely this pattern is playing out inside your home right now. This is not about bad parenting. This is about smart parenting going quietly, systematically wrong in ways that feel completely right in the moment. High-achieving parents do something that feels deeply loving. They remove obstacles. They anticipate problems before their children even sense them. They smooth the path, advocate loudly, intervene early, and optimize relentlessly. A struggling math concept gets a tutor within the week. A social conflict gets a parent-mediated resolution before the child has processed their own feelings. A moment of boredom gets filled with an enrichment activity. Every single one of these responses comes from a place of genuine care. And every single one of them is quietly teaching the child's nervous system a devastating lesson. The lesson is this: you cannot handle difficulty on your own. Psychologists have a term for what happens when children are consistently shielded from manageable stress. They call it fragility. Not the kind that comes from neglect or trauma, but the kind that comes from never being allowed to struggle and survive. Researcher Jean Twenge, who has studied generational mental health trends for over 2 decades, found that anxiety and depression among young people began rising sharply around 2012. That rise correlates not with economic collapse or global catastrophe, but with the widespread adoption of hyper-involved parenting styles and the simultaneous removal of unstructured, unsupervised childhood experience. The children who never scraped a knee without a parent rushing over never learned that scraped knees heal. Smart parents also tend to be emotionally intelligent parents. They validate feelings. They name emotions. They create space for their children to express anxiety, sadness, and fear without judgment. This sounds ideal, and in measured doses, it absolutely is. But there is a critical difference between validating a feeling and reinforcing the belief that the feeling is dangerous. When a child says they are scared to go to school and a parent responds by letting them stay home, the parent has communicated something powerful without saying a single word. They have communicated that the fear was correct, that school was, in fact, something to be avoided. Anxiety grows in the direction of avoidance. Every accommodation that helps a child escape discomfort in the short term makes the discomfort larger the next time it appears. There is another layer that rarely gets discussed openly. High-achieving parents often carry an invisible pressure that transfers directly onto their children. It does not arrive through harsh criticism or impossible demands. It arrives through enthusiasm, through the way a parent's eyes light up at an A grade and go slightly dim at a B, through the casual comment about a friend's child getting into a prestigious program, through the college conversations that begin in middle school. Children are extraordinarily sensitive instruments. They read the emotional temperature of a room with stunning accuracy. When they sense that their performance is connected to their parents' emotional state, they stop taking risks, they stop experimenting, they stop failing forward, and they start managing their parents' feelings instead of developing their own resilience. Anxiety is not a signal that something has gone wrong. It is a signal that the nervous system is preparing for a challenge. The goal of healthy development is not to eliminate that signal. It is to teach a child that they can feel the signal and move forward anyway. That capacity is built through repeated exposure to manageable difficulty without rescue. It is built through boredom that the child has to solve themselves, through conflicts that the child has to navigate without a parent stepping in, through failure that the child has to sit with, process, and recover from independently. None of this requires harsh parenting. It requires restraint. And restraint is extraordinarily difficult for a parent who has the resources, the intelligence, and the deep love to intervene. The most powerful thing a smart parent can do for an anxious child is to stop treating anxiety as an emergency. When a child comes to you overwhelmed, the instinct is to fix it immediately. The more effective response is to stay calm, communicate confidence in the child's ability to handle it, and resist the urge to solve what the child needs to solve themselves. This is not emotional abandonment. This is the highest form of belief in your child. You are saying without words that you trust them. that the difficulty in front of them is within their capacity, that you are present, but not required. That distinction between being present and being required is where resilience is actually built. The generation being raised right now is not anxious because their parents failed them. They are anxious because their parents loved them in the most sophisticated way they knew how, and that sophistication occasionally crossed the line into overprotection. Recognizing that line is not a reason for guilt. It is an invitation to evolve. The research is clear, the pattern is visible, and the correction is available to any parent willing to sit with their own discomfort long enough to let their child sit with theirs. Smart parenting is not about having all the answers. It is about trusting that your child can find some of the answers themselves. That trust, more than any tutor, any intervention, or any perfectly worded validation, is what builds a child who can face the world without falling apart.